take them all. Written and narrated by Lady Spookaria and featuring Midnight Chills. I never knew when they would finally come for me. We lived in isolation, away from a world that had grown dangerous. Our families decided to settle in a refuge in the mountains. Here we would be safe. I grew up hearing tales of a world outside. It was evil, corrupt, and filled with people who wanted us to suffer. We needed to stay safe from them. Here we were safe from harm, away from them. This was our Eden, our sanctuary, a place we would be safe, if, and only if, we followed the rules. It was us, the group, us against a cruel, harsh world. Sometimes, I would hear my mother's cries. She always hid them while she tried to sleep. She sobbed into her pillow, holding her bony body and rocking herself. She would bite the pillow and cry, never wanting us to hear a word of it. Sometimes, she would plead, "Forgive me. Forgive me," again and again under her breath. One time, I ran over to her, hugged her, and asked what was wrong. She told me not to worry. She told me not to tell anyone. And then she would attempt to dry her tears. But why? Why did she keep crying? Why did she cry every single night? The next day, our leader, the glorious Brendan Tarrant, stood and spoke to the gathered adults. Everyone was there. Everyone wanted to be there. When he spoke, everyone listened, and no one ever dared to interrupt him. He is our leader, our father, and our divine prophet. He speaks with the will of God, and no one else is able to hear nor understand God. He is beloved, the only true beloved, and through him alone, we learn, we grow, and he protects us. When I was younger, someone tried to argue with him, and we all took him down into the pit, the place where wrongdoers were taken to be punished. They needed to be punished. They needed to learn, or their souls wouldn't be safe. It was all out of love. Always out of love. The man's arms were tied to posts on either side of him, stretched out, and we were all instructed to watch. I enjoyed watching. Wrongdoers needed to be punished. We couldn't look away. We needed to see. We needed to see that justice would be done. We couldn't hear what the man was saying to Brandon, nor could we hear what the glorious leader was saying in return. Now you must remember, we are a peaceful people. Knives were forbidden in the community, only used for butchering beasts for us to consume. I kept watching, waiting. Our glorious leader looked on the ground for a moment. He frowned. He looked upset. He lifted a jagged rock from the ground and held it up to the sky. The crowd were in awe. Each gesture he made must have had hidden meanings, all from the divine. What did he see that we couldn't? Not everyone was gifted by the divine. How did he know this rock was special and unlike the rest? How I wanted to be divine and perfect. Just like the prophet. Our prophet began to cut out the man's tongue with the jagged rock. No, twist and pull while striking at the tough muscle. Blood soaked the ground and the prophet's face. Everyone was silent. None dared to look away. I wanted nothing more than to be like the prophet. The man screamed louder while our prophet was silent. Our prophet is everything to me. The man fell silent, and the prophet held up the tongue. A glorious prize to the gathered community. As he squeezed it, the blood trickled down his arms. He gazed up at the sky. He inhaled slowly and smiled. A look of peace and tranquility on his face. His voice boomed.
I have saved my brother, my dearest Michael, from his wicked tongue, so he may be saved, and rejoin you as a member of our flock.
And that look of pure love appeared in those soft, brown eyes of his. It was silent, before everyone erupted in a cheer of joy. Happy that the community had been saved, and we were all in God's favor once more, they unbound Michael, his name returned to him, and took him towards the healing tent. I kept watching the prophet, who tossed the tongue in the air and let it fall to the dirt. The camp dogs approached, and I watched them bicker over the meat, growling and snarling before it was torn.
Let the beast devour what made him wicked, corrupt.
The prophet called out loudly. I wanted to be like him. His face looked different now. Perhaps even those who had been touched by the divine needed time away from the grace of God. His eyebrows narrowed. He had a smirk and chuckled to himself. Finally, those eyes locked with mine, and they were hard, cold, and ruthless. I didn't look away. I wanted to be him. The prophet approached me and I had to stare up at him. He was a picture of health, no marks nor signs of illness on his skin. Due to his rank, he always got served first and would allocate the best food to himself and those he favored. The prophet ensured only the most worthy would receive sustenance. He tilted my head upwards, his fingers resting under my chin. Neither of us broke eye contact. He told me someday I would be ready for him. Before I could answer, he walked away and I watched him leave. Our prophet never looked back. The memory haunted me. I didn't tell my parents when I got back to our small hut and curled up to sleep. Occasionally, one of my family members would displease the prophet, and our food would be harshly rationed. Please don't judge our prophet. He did it because he loves us, and only ever wants the best for us. My mother got worse, though. Her bones poked through her skin, and her cheeks were hollow. Unable to even take the smallest bite. And would have to watch while the scraps were thrown to the pigs and to the dogs. The prophet knocked on the door one evening, and this is an unspeakable honor. People who go to the prophet when they are summoned and are made to wait. He never comes to us. This was the first time I ever heard of it. My father nearly died of shock and immediately bowed his head, opened the door and waited. The prophet entered, took my hands in his and asked my father to marry me. My parents instantly agreed. I would become a divine wife of the prophet. The previous one died giving birth to his son. In a blur, the other members of the community entered, and my family's lives were forever changed. Food was brought over to us, clothing, status, everything. All rested on the prophet's favor. My parents began to change towards me. The day of the wedding came and I was dressed in a long white gown that flowed while I walked. The fabric was soft, unlike the coarse material I usually had to wear, and a sign of my status to come. The prophet led the ceremony, of course, since he was the one closest to God. The wedding night happened and I was ignorant as to what was to come. He said nothing, stared at me with his cold, dead eyes. The charm was gone. All I can remember is gasping for breath, scratching at him and pleading with him to stop, while I died in the prophet's hands. A way some would say is an honorable way to die. My body limp and lifeless. The prophet said nothing, smiled and lit a cigarette. The illusion broken. His wife and many others whispered, along with all the others from before. They sobbed, cried, and pleaded. They wished they knew, but I knew. I always knew. I will not sleep, and nor will my body. I will be his devil and his tormentor. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please do yourself a favor and check out my amazing guest, Midnight Chills, and subscribe if you haven't already. This video was made with the support of my incredible Patreons and channel members. Links available below if you would like to sign up. I also have some kick-ass merch available. Consider getting some if you'd like. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to smack that bell. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.